Hi, and welcome to the Trusted Intermediaries training module. Today we're going to be taking a look at some introductory information about the role of trusted intermediaries and how they can help their clients with their civil legal issues. Let's begin by taking a look at what this module will cover. Today we're going to introduce some important concepts, like that of a civil legal need and a civil legal issue. We're also going to talk about the role of trusted intermediaries, as well as some of the things that trusted intermediaries can do to help their clients who are dealing with civil legal issues. But what is a civil legal issue? Civil legal issues are issues that can be resolved through a formal legal process. These are not criminal law or prison law issues. When someone experiences a civil legal issue, this will give rise to a civil legal need. These are needs that require quick and accessible legal services, legal advice, and/or legal resources in order to address the underlying civil legal issue. The civil legal issues experienced by justice-involved individuals are often related to their most basic needs. Some examples include being evicted, losing access to income support, being expelled from school, working overtime but not getting paid, or dealing with child custody issues. Civil legal issues are dealt with in the civil legal system. Unlike the criminal legal system, civil legal issues are not dealt with using the same process. Different issues will require different processes. Some issues can be dealt with in courts, while others are dealt with in tribunals or regulatory institutions. The other important distinction between the civil legal system and the criminal legal system is that the civil legal system does not demand participation. Oftentimes, individuals will need to make a choice to participate in the civil legal system, especially if they want to address their own civil legal issues. They will also often have to do this within a specific time frame. This is why timely referrals to legal services, legal advice, and legal resources is so crucial. The other important thing to keep in mind is that justice-involved individuals will often experience civil legal issues as a direct result of their justice system involvement. The civil legal issues they experience will also often be multiple, overlapping, and compounding. This means when they experience one civil legal issue, others might occur at the same time or later on for similar reasons. Justice-involved individuals will also face barriers to addressing their civil legal issues. Some of these barriers include things like difficulties recognizing and identifying when they're experiencing a civil legal issue, having feelings that these experiences are just their lot in life, having feelings of distrust and avoidance of the civil legal system because of their involvement with the criminal justice system, and having perceptions of these issues as being less serious than criminal law issues when they do recognize that they are experiencing them. These barriers might lead to these individuals not seeking out help to address the issue, or not receiving prompt access to the necessary resources which might fix the issue. But that's where trusted intermediaries like you can play an important role. A trusted intermediary is someone who has a deep understanding of their client's multidimensional and intersecting needs. They also understand the unique circumstances that their clients navigate. These individuals have earned the trust of their clients through effective relationship building and long-term engagement. This gives them a unique role and puts them in a strategic position to act as a bridge to their clients accessing legal information, legal services, or legal resources. As a trusted intermediary, you can help your clients in many ways. You can help your client identify the legal issue they're experiencing, help them detect potential legal problems that haven't occurred yet, but that they might want to be aware of, provide them with some basic information about legal rights and procedures, help them gather legal forms and documents, and you can also point them to resources, including published legal information about legal advice hotlines, as well as contact information for legal professionals in the area that might be able to help them with their issues. You can also act as a support person for your client. This means that you can attend court hearings with them, or go with them to meet with their legal service provider. You can also work with their legal service provider to make sure that your client receives focused, efficient support, and that their unique needs and circumstances are taken into account. However, when you're helping a client, you should be sure to not provide them with legal advice. Legal advice is something that can only be provided by a licensed legal service provider, such as a lawyer or a paralegal. But sometimes it's hard to navigate the distinction between legal information and legal advice. So let's take a look at the difference between the two. As a trusted intermediary, giving legal information to your client is an important way that you can help them navigate their civil legal issues. Giving legal information can look like helping a client find and access legal services, legal resources, or legal advice. Helping your client determine some possible first steps to solving their problem. Or providing your client with general information about their rights and responsibilities under the law. Legal advice, on the other hand, can look like interpreting and applying the law to your client's specific situation or circumstances, making an assessment about whether and how the law applies to their situation, or whether they are entitled to a remedy, or giving them a specific recommendation about what they should legally do in a situation. These are things that trusted intermediaries should not do when assisting a client. If your client requires legal advice, they should be referred to a legal service provider. Great! Now that we've covered the basics, let's take a look at what this might look like in practice, and how you can help a client who approaches you with a civil legal issue. To keep things simple, we can think of helping a client with a civil legal issue as a two-step process. The first step is to spot, and the second is to refer. Let's take a look at each of these in a little bit more detail. Remember, research has shown that justice-involved individuals might not always be able to recognize and identify when they're experiencing a civil legal issue. So if a client approaches you with a problem, a situation, or a concern, the first thing that you can do to help is to help them spot the issue. But how can you do this? Well, there might be some observations that you can make, or some questions that you can ask your client to help you and them spot the issue they're experiencing. Here are some observations that you can make. Is the problem that your client is describing a life event? You can think of a life event as something big, which changes someone's situation. Maybe your client stopped receiving their government income support. Maybe they were evicted from their housing. Maybe someone owes them money. Maybe they separated from their partner. Or maybe they lost their job. These types of events might indicate that your client is experiencing a civil legal issue. Another observation that you can make is whether or not your client is attending the office with legal forms, letters, or documents. This might mean that they need to take action on something. Finally, you can consider whether your client is describing a problem that sounds as if it might be a legal problem. Some examples of what this might look like is a client who tells you that their landlord told them that they have to move out, or a client who tells you that they didn't receive as much money this month from Ontario Works. It could also look like a client telling you that their boss hasn't paid them yet for work that they did, or that they're afraid their child might get kicked out of school. If you observe any of these things, it might be an indication that your client is experiencing a civil legal issue. If nothing comes up on observation, there are also some questions that you can ask your client, depending on the type of problem that they're raising with you. For example, if you have a client who has been charged with an offense, you can ask them whether the offense happened at their home or in the residential complex. If it did, they might experience issues with their housing. You could also ask them whether they have a spouse or children. If they do, then they might experience issues surrounding their family life if they've been charged with an offense. Or if you have a youth client, you can ask them if the offense occurred at school. If it did, they might experience issues surrounding their education. Another example could be a client who's been taken into custody. You can ask them if they have a plan for paying rent while they're incarcerated. This is an important question to ask because not paying rent could lead to an eviction. You can also ask them what their source of income is. If they're employed, their incarceration could prevent them from working or from being paid. If your client receives government income assistance, on the other hand, like Ontario Works or ODSP, for example, their incarceration could affect their entitlement to these payments. You could also ask your client what their childcare plan is, if they have any children. If your client has been incarcerated, they might experience issues related to their child custody. Asking questions like these could help you spot the issue that your client is experiencing. Now that you've spotted the issue, you can move on to step 2, the referral. Sometimes this could be a referral to public legal information, but other times it could be a referral to legal advice or maybe even representation from a legal service provider. If you're thinking about referring a client to a legal service provider, there are a few things that you should keep in mind. The first is that the provider needs to be licensed to provide legal services. They also need to serve the area where your client lives or works. It's important too to check that the provider speaks your client's language and that they can offer accessible services if necessary. You should also make sure that your client can meet any financial eligibility requirements. This is particularly important to keep in mind if you're referring a client to a community legal aid clinic. The other important thing to keep in mind is that the provider can actually help with the specific type of legal problem or issue that your client is facing. This is important to make sure clients get to the right office the first time. We call this a quality referral. This means that the legal service provider that you're referring your client to works in the area of law that they need help with. Making a quality referral is important so that your client's help can be timely and tailored to their circumstances. You can also help make a referral a quality referral by giving the legal service provider a broad indication of the civil legal issue being faced. This can help the provider get a general understanding of the situation, as well as an understanding of your client's unique needs. Some examples of where you can refer clients include community legal aid clinics, student legal aid clinics, specialty legal aid clinics, or independent legal service providers. And just like that, we've covered the 2-step process. Until next time.